Shanna Gamble, Bureau of Meteorology.
Sharon from Meteorology.
Tropical Cyclone Fina has started impacting the Coburg Peninsula today.
Cyclone Fina. There were starting
Over the past 24 hours, Cyclone Fina weakened to a Category 1 system and started moving south. Overnight, Croker Island recorded 190 millimetres of rain. Most of that fell in the early hours of the morning.
Croker Island, Mijalam, Purara, 90 millimeter.
Early this morning, McClure Island started recording gale force winds, and these gales, with wind gusts up to 120 kilometres per hour, are continuing on the Coburg Peninsula today.
Can you repeat that?
Yep. Early this morning, McClure Island started recording gale force winds.
Start recording
And these wind gusts up to 120 kilometres per hour.
And there are 120 kilometers.
Are continuing on Coburg today. So today, a tropical cyclone warning remains in place for communities in the northwest top end.
Area.
Early today, the cyclone warning area was extended to include Darwin and the rural area.
Rural Darwin.
So some of the communities in that warning area include Minjalang, Warrawee, Millakapiti, Pelangimpi, Warramianga, Darwin and the rural area, including Bachelor and the Cox Peninsula, and Dundee Beach.
Croker Island, Menegutta, Millakapiti, Bachelor, Northern Territory area.
The watch area has been extended south of Darwin to Dundee and Wadair, including the Daly River mouth. Maningrida and communities further east have been removed from the cyclone watch area. These areas of cyclone warning and cyclone watch will change as we update our warnings every 3 hours.
Check up every 3 hours.
So looking ahead, Tropical Cyclone Fina is expected to re-intensify to a Category 2 system as it gets closer to the coast. Heavy rain and strong winds will continue across all of the north coast and extend further inland and west into the warning area over the coming days.
Can you repeat that?
Yep. Heavy rain and strong winds will continue on the north coast.
Region.
And extend further inland and west in the coming days.
ngarawi ila gabi kabara kabne ngora nonupe.
Those northern coastal communities, including the Tiwi Islands, are already starting to feel the impacts of Tropical Cyclone Fina.
Ara kamada warango gabu mu. Dra ara pedan andra bonitaka.
And these conditions will worsen during today and into tomorrow.
Dra bonitaka jigotrum from tapna amda ngani tapna.
While the weather has been quite calm in Darwin over the last day or so, conditions will also worsen in Darwin in the early hours of tomorrow and into tomorrow evening.
Araga jiladi aragapne bora hoja ngan stara mara rikita pora e bol ngan dabne ran ngan abunu da kapwa kapdawn area.
Gales of around 90 kilometres an hour are expected in the Darwin area during tomorrow morning, but more likely during the day tomorrow.
Can you repeat that again?
Yep. Gales of around 90 kilometres per hour are expected in the morning tomorrow, but more likely during the middle of the day and the afternoon.
Adra gale force wind abu one da 90 meter kilometer. Dra jigodrum rai. Abe
it's important to be aware that before the cyclone impacts, you can expect to see thunderstorms with damaging or even destructive winds and heavy to intense rainfall before the cyclone hits, and that could extend as far east as Groote Island.
Before Andra Wonda Company, Wakana happened lightning under thunder. In Ravi Inda, Amunuta Andra Wonitaka. Having Amara Groote Island mob.
The worst of the conditions in Darwin is expected to be during the day tomorrow and tomorrow evening in particular. The worst of the conditions. The worst of the conditions in Darwin are expected to be during the day tomorrow and into tomorrow evening.
Andra Wonitaka. Andra intensify Gardner Tapna, Wajagari Tapna Abune. Colonel Tapne.
There may be periods during the day where conditions seem to ease, and this is typical during a cyclone event, but it will be temporary, so do not assume that the danger has passed until you have been advised that it has.
Wajagaramo Ilaka Gurambole. Wajaga Kapna Amarakabi Blob Mudu Nunake BOM. Ara Umamle Bureau of Meteorology.
So just to recap on the winds will strengthen to 100 kilometres an hour with stronger gusts of 120 kilometres an hour in the warning area.
120 miles an hour.
Destructive wind gusts of 150 kilometres an hour could develop during this evening in the warning area as the system nears the coast.
Can you repeat that again?
As the system nears the coast, destructive wind gusts of over 150 kilometres an hour could develop.
150 kilometres.
Outside of the cyclone warning and watch area, severe thunderstorms with destructive winds could develop as far east as Groote Island. A flood watch is current for much of the northern top end. Daily rainfall totals of 200 millimetres and more are expected in this flood watch area.
Adra pagata amda onitaga. Dra amda ingati gogo negabi flood waters.
Flash flooding is possible, particularly around coastal communities.
Adra ara pagata amda negabi onitaga. Dra abramai abramai ingati pagata. And I'm flood ibra.
A storm tide of about 1 metre above the highest tide is expected around Minjalang and can be above normal in other coastal communities over the next couple of days.
Adra bonita kan ingade na flood kabi ngamara kabu ujuma kabu khawbe peninsula.
And dangerous surf with damaging waves and coastal flooding can be expected around the warning area as well.
Dra abugumura nimna ingade wave amte thara bapure nimna winga kabi papumura kapune.
So stay up to date with the Bureau warnings on the BOM weather app.
Kinga kaja waram kapna ngamara kabra uplamuri kanuna ke BOM Bureau of Meteorology urara udama.
Thanks, Richard.
Good afternoon, Superintendent Kirsten Engels, Incident Controller, Northern Territory Police.
Dra na mamda dra wakam kabi madra pura udama.
So today is day 3 of our active cyclone response. Cyclone Fina is beginning to show their presence along the Northern Islands now.
Can you repeat the first one?
So today is day 3 of our cyclone response.
Ngan wa ye drama day wa kinga nimna kan ngawa nimna ke cyclone watch wa.
Cyclone Fina is beginning to show their presence on the Northern Islands now.
Na dra woni jaga dra show jumindra indra imba ina bune tolme gabwan nanupe.
Schools in Minjalang and Warrawee, Perlingimbi and Milakapiti have all been closed today.
Gabu hamara nanupe Milakapiti Warrawee Minjalang ki garden font ure uluga dara school closed room bri anaga woni jaga bune tai ingre.
Tomorrow we expect to see impacts starting to be felt in the Darwin area.
Ke bagare ngasat film andra woni jaga ap galu beko andra woni jaga.
We are preparing for all scenarios, but we have to keep monitoring the track of this cyclone.
Urara monstrum andra naga woni jaga kabi kurma kabi kabi nyani nanupe.
We are standing up an emergency hotline, 1-800-888-901, and that will be available from this afternoon.
Urara in mare tuang ramani from Aragapna Mandra no Holomar Nage 1-800 Nava Urara Umanga Aragapna Amanda.
Now I'll speak about separate areas.
In Marabum Gabi Yoni Mamara Tagama, Opera Tagama.
Starting with Minjalang and Warrawee.
Aragamara from Minjilangamda Warrawee.
So we are asking the residents of Minjalang and Warrawee to pick their place of shelter and to be there before darkness tonight.
Aragapamara Umugabi Minjilangamda Warrawee. Urara Budara Gabna Amara. Nuramo Ilagab Gorambole, Nuragabi Saffron Shelter Gorambole.
We know there are about 280 people in the Minjalang community.
Gabi Minjilang 280 population Amaro.
The emergency shelter is open. It's been open since last night, and that's at the school.
Aragabu Aranonabura Puro Aragamada Gabi School for shelter. For another
I can tell you that Minjalang residents have been through this before. They're prepared and they're ready. And I can tell you that the community has plenty of food and water. There is a shelter open in Warrawee. It's been open since last night. Again, this community is used to these events and is ready and prepared. And they have plenty of food and water. I'll move to the Tiwi Islands. Residents in the Tiwi Islands are asked to find their place of shelter and to be there before dark tonight. The ferry between Darwin and the Tiwis is no longer running. Again, the Tiwi Islands are used to this sort of event and they are prepared and ready. And now I'll move to Darwin. As the bomb said, we can expect to start seeing the winds and rain in Darwin tomorrow. Today is your final prep day. We expect to tell Darwin residents to take shelter. We expect to advise them to take shelter tomorrow. Based on the information we have, we are comfortable that your homes are able to withstand the event. If you have concerns, we ask you to go and find somewhere that you feel safe to shelter. When the storm impacts are starting to be felt, we ask you to park your car, find your shelter, and stay there until you are told it is clear to go out. Today, schools, shops and businesses remained open for the most part. Tomorrow, some businesses may choose to close. The MVR office at Goyder Road will be closed tomorrow. Do not go there. Tomorrow, buses will not be running in Darwin. We want you to stay home. Public shelters in Darwin are not open at this time. If you feel like you cannot stay at your home, find somewhere safe to move to today. There's no need to panic. Just be prepared. The places to go for messaging
in message.
Include the Secure NT website and the BOM website.
POM, POM Meteorological.
Few key messages. Enact your emergency plans.
Ye up and plan.
There will be rain and wind prior to the cyclone. Do not drive in flooded water conditions.
Flood area.
Let's all together use our common sense and stay safe. Thank you.
You've said that some businesses may choose to open tomorrow. Does it get to a point where you'll enforce closures?
We will not direct businesses to shut.
Why are the shelters not opening?
We're not at. Sorry.
Do I have to?
Yes, please. So
Can you repeat that again?
we will not direct businesses to close. Sorry,
Why are the shelters not opening?
We're not at the stage of shelters having to be open yet. We're confident that people are safe in their own homes. We will continue to monitor and keep people updated.
Keep Muhammad updated.
How will people know when the shelters are open?
People will know when the shelters are open because there will be very overt messaging through all of the media outlets.
Media,
Have you got reports from Midgelang and Warrawee? What are the conditions like out there?
We spoke with the police on the ground at Midgelang and Warrawee this morning at 8 o'clock. They I've heard reports that the weather is increasing, but they are still calm.
Free.
Can you explain, there was a little bit of confusion this morning. What's the difference between a cyclone warning and an emergency warning, and what action people should take when each one is issued? Because there seemed to be a little bit of confusion around that this morning.
I'm going to hand over to my NTES colleague for that.
Thanks very much. Wayne Snell, the Chief Officer of the Northern Territory Emergency Service. There has been a little bit of confusion in relation to this, and if I can make it very clear to everybody. That a cyclone warning issued from the Bureau of Meteorology is an indication for people to then watch what's going on much more closely around them from their environment and watch what's happening in the messaging space, and to take action in relation to their emergency plan and in relation to the things that they need to do to make sure their family is safe, to make sure that the final preparations are undertaken for the security of their home, and to make sure that they've got their communication systems ready in preparation for a potential outage.
Being prepared, being quiet, Cyclone Fina.
When that transitions to an emergency warning, that is the time to undertake your final activities to make yourself safe, to put yourself in a position where you don't need to move, where you don't need to travel anymore, where all of your facilities are secured and all of your family knows exactly what's going to happen next. That is the time to wait for the impact and to stay hunkered down for that period of time and wait for the all clear.
So just to clarify, we're on a cyclone warning at the moment in Darwin, we're not on an emergency warning. Is that
Correct.
I mean, this might be a question for another time, but should the terminology be changed there, because it does seem to be a confusing situation?
So there are conversations going on around Australia at the moment. The Australian warning system is a system that's adopted across all of the hazards. So, and it's only been developed into the current model over the last couple of years, quite extensive consultation. So there's still a little bit more work to be done in that space, because not all of the other organisations that are outside the emergency management realm have been brought into that conversation fully. So a little bit more work to be done in that space. For all of us, For all of us, the important part is to know that when the Bureau of Meteorology issues one of their clear pieces of communication, the next piece of communication that you have is, what does that mean to me and what should I do now? So the Bureau tells you that there's an issue and that there's a weather problem coming towards you, and then the next piece of communication under the Australian warning system tells you what you need to think about and what you need to do.
Issue for America,
Might be a question for Shanna. What are the tides doing when the cyclone's expected to come towards Darwin?
As a tropical cyclone approaches the coast, it can cause the tide to be higher than it usually is. Yep. As a tropical cyclone approaches the coast, it can make the tide higher than usual. How high that is will depend on the timing of the coastal crossing and the tide height at that time. So the current advice is that at Minjalang, we could expect to see the tide to be 1 metre higher than the highest astronomical tide, so the highest tide that you ever see there, 1 metre higher than that.
High tide. Before,
but at other coastal communities, although the tide will be higher than normal, it is not expected to be higher than the highest astronomical tide.
Well, high tide.
I will also say that with the worsening conditions we can expect to see damaging waves and the coastal areas becoming quite dangerous.
Well,
So that tide that's going to be 1 metre higher than normal, does that pose a storm surge risk?
So the tide that I'm talking about for Minjalang being 1 metre above the highest astronomical tide is the storm surge risk. And so at Minjalang, we do expect the tide to be higher, 1 metre higher than the highest astronomical tide.
Our Gapamara, which moved up in Milan. Other winger. And the Unizaka Bunmari Pakatan Arab more Helgamara Atar free. What mirror are more Arbohara.
So does that pose potentially any danger? Or?
Might have to defer to Tess about the impacts on that. Yep.
So at this stage, we have flood watch has been issued for a number of areas, but none of those predictions at this time are likely to reach minor flood warnings. Also in that space, 1 metre over the highest tide should only affect very low-lying areas immediately in the coastal area.
Can you repeat it again?
At this stage, there are no flood watches. There are no flood warnings issued. There is only a flood watch for a number of areas, and it's not expected to reach minor flood warning levels.
Opinion none of it. I had a flood watch. Nana, pray about you have a gallow. But Nane, where flood watch for Arab. Yeta, we makarum for Arab in flood happening. Have more out. None of it.
We have reviewed the flood inundation maps
Keep flooding
for a 1 metre over highest tide levels,
Arab 1 meter, Arab move. You got Arab.
and it indicates that it will only be minor inundation in very localised coastal areas.
Wakapa, America, Rumo, Girakabi, Winger. Arab, who I had to go on in a high tide.
Yesterday there was still a possibility that some communities could be evacuated. Is that potentially still on the cards or not?
At this stage, there are no planned evacuations for any communities.
But I hope I follow bringing none of it. But I'll Bokama with more of that.
Wayne, heading into tomorrow, what's your key piece of advice for residents in affected areas?
The residents in the affected areas for the Greater Darwin area.
Could you repeat it?
The residents in the affected areas in the Greater Darwin area.
I had a resident from Darwin.
Could I just ask that you say it in one complete sentence?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. The advice for residents in the Greater Darwin area is to enact your plan, act early, make sure that your valuables are secured and that your home is secured, and be prepared to look after yourself for the next 3 days.
I even Nagamandani prepare Naram Anula essential stuff and one Narama in the Lemia. Kunji Naram probably pre Naga Bunita in Gray, Bunita, none the Brahmin.
Last question.
Wayne, what kind of preparation is happening in places like Dundee Beach, which, like the Tiwi Islands, doesn't have a cyclone shelter and is perhaps more at risk of Fina intensifying to a Category 3?
So at this stage, the advice for preparation for the Greater Darwin area is the same for Dundee Beach as what it is for all of the other outlying suburbs. It is to prepare your home correctly, have an emergency plan for yourself and your family, and make sure that you have a means of being able to receive communication so you understand what the risk is and what actions you may need to take as a result.
I don't remember if Dundee, but Arma, Rora Ingrid, Gilead, Prandra, Unita, or Gilead, Dundee, Abraham, or Imga prepare Naram Lema Poha, Naga Unita, Abuni Ingrid.